Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogrammed Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. And Chantal Donnelly, physical therapist and author of Settled, How to Find Calm in a Stress-Inducing World. Here at City Club Los Angeles, we follow our guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast at City Club Los Angeles. I'm Dr. Supatra Tovar.
And I am Chantal Donnelly. We are excited to have Deborah Rosen in the house. Deborah is an associate marriage family therapist. I got that right. And also a responsive body practitioner as opposed to an unresponsive body practitioner.
Respond.
We're going to be, I'm going to let Supatra read a little bit about what Deborah's all about, and then we are going to start with our questions.
Yes, Deborah has a background in modern contemporary dance forms with a minor in dance from Cal Poly Pomona. She's also certified in Pilates and choreographs and produces dance productions. It is her love of movement and belief in the intelligence and power of the body that has led her to continue her studies in a somatic form. In her therapeutic practice, Deborah takes a body-centered, dance-informed approach with her clients, and Deborah also addresses trauma and stress-related disorders and helps to release traumatic experiences that can become stored in the body. So, Deborah, tell us about your background as a dancer and Pilates instructor. What drew you to studying dance and Pilates, and what does your practice do for you mentally and physically?
Well, initially, I was drawn to dance when I was in college because I needed something physical to do and I didn't want to do anything else. And I had done a little bit of dance growing up, a little tap dancing, but no intense training. And once I started taking dance classes at Cal Poly, I just fell in love with dance. And then I saw this dance performance by a company called Contraband that's from San Francisco. They no longer are a company, and everybody's gone off and do their own kind of choreographies and companies. But they did this piece at Cal Poly Pomona that just was so mind-blowing for me. And I just felt so connected to the movement and how they were singing and reading poetry and these amazing lifts they did with one another, their connection between one another. And it just was like, I remember being like this. And I remember that summer I did do an intensive up in San Francisco to work with them, which was amazing. And then I continued dancing ever since. And dancing was actually a challenge for me because it wasn't natural for me to be this technical dance person. But I also had the opportunity to work with professors and choreographers who, that we did improv and, we did things that were sort of pedestrian-esque and things that were abstract that, the theme, the story within the work, I was able to express with my body. And I didn't realize at the time, though, how key that was for me and how it helped me be a more grounded person, a more focused person, be happy, more positive person. But I honestly didn't realize all those things till years later. And I, again, continued dance and danced in a company for a little bit. From 98 to 2006. And then I started to do my own choreography. As for Pilates, Pilates came into play sort of oh, okay. I started managing a Pilates studio and then decided I'd like to teach. And Pilates gave me a structure and foundation to get more connected to how to strengthen and be more flexible, as well as dance technique. But But because of my dance experiences and my challenges and struggles, I also learned, and maybe because I was already somewhat mature, I'll say, that that I might not be the dancer who could do the big split or the big kick, but I could be the dancer that could be very expressive, and that could share a story with the audience, and learn more deeply about myself and what it's like to be with others, and just feel like just connected in general to this big world we live in.
Did you find that Pilates made you a better dancer? Because I know when I used to dance, and then I went on to study Pilates, I was like, oh, wait, I wish I had Pilates first, because that would have made me much stronger as a dancer.
I think that it definitely would have contributed to that for sure. And I know, or I don't know, but I've heard that some like dance departments, they do have like Pilates there too for their students to partake in. But at my school, they didn't have that. But like, yeah, I could see that. But like, when I was teaching Pilates, that became a whole other thing too, about like helping the person I was working with and focusing on their needs and learning how to modify what they needed, or how I could push them to be even like, to see where they could go. And like sneak peeking on the physical therapy people to learn a lot of those modifications.
Right.
Because we all work together, folks. So
Yes.
we learned from each other.
Supatra, Deborah, and I all did work together in
Yeah.
a physical therapy Pilates environment.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do for people who can't do an exercise and all that?
So I learned a lot
modification?
about that there, and
Mhm.
honestly, like I didn't practice Pilates as much as I would hope to. Like you get so caught up in like your work and teaching, but I think that's very valid for sure.
Mhm.
So how did you go from being a dancer and a Pilates instructor and clearly enjoying that and choreographing and really sort of evolving as a dancer to wanting to get your marriage family therapist certificate?
Well, that kind of came separate because I initially wanted to study dance movement therapy. I met someone who had a master's in dance movement therapy, and so I started to look into that. But as we discussed behind the scenes, the program that existed in California went away. And so I searched for other ways to do it. And they have a way you could do it through the American Dance Therapy Association called alternate route, where you get a master's in something. It could be even just dance, or it could be a marriage and family therapy. Because I thought I wanted to get into the psychotherapy some way as well. And I felt that studying about family dynamics, communication, all those kinds of ways to be with people would also be helpful. So I ended up getting my master's in marriage and family therapy for that reason, no program being in California. And I was going to do the alternate route, but then I decided to research some more and discovered somatics, and then discovered responsive body. And that's a program that offers a somatic approach to working with people therapeutically.
Before we get into that, was there something personal that led you to want to be a therapist? Was there an inspiration? Did you have your own therapist? Did you go through something that inspired you?
Yes. So there was a period where I was struggling for various reasons. My dad had passed like just a few days before I got married. That was really difficult. It affected my marriage. My husband tried to help in lots of ways. And, there's like sometimes, that partner doesn't know. He knew a lot. He knows a lot. I love him. I love him a lot because he tried really hard. And there's something else I'm missing here. Sorry. Okay. My dad passed. It affected my marriage. Yes. And we had, before it affected my marriage, we had experienced a miscarriage. There was that. And so I usually would go to dance class. I had a regular routine of going to dance class, but I knew everybody in dance class so well. When I started having like these really difficult times, I was like, yeah, I don't feel like I can go, because if someone says, "How are you?" I can't be fake. I'm not the type of person to be like, "Oh, everything's great." I just am not. So I started to do talk therapy, and a friend of mine referred me to someone, and she was great. She was fine. But while I was in talk therapy, I realized I was missing something, and that was my movement. And I guess she helped a little bit because I felt strong enough to go back. And then I had confided in a few friends of what was going on too, and so I felt that support. And I realized how important it was for me to get back into the studio and move and be with those feelings, but also know that I think it really helped me. I don't know if you guys have heard neuroplasticity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it helped me find ways to deal and to understand myself better, to be resourceful. And luckily, my husband and I got through that time. And gosh, I think I forgot the question, but
that's plenty of inspiration to go into.
Oh, that's
therapy.
yes. Okay, that was a big question. Yeah. And so in the midst of all that, I was also like thinking, like, what can I do? Because I was feeling I needed a change of focus, of career, of where I could be of service, I guess, or where I can help people feel similar things, that they can get connected in that way. And so back to all that and trying to find a program, right? And so we already discussed that. And but yeah, that's what led me to going the route of getting a master's in marriage and family therapy, and then finding also certification in somatics.
Well, we really want to know what a responsive body practitioner is.
What is that?
What is that exactly?
Okay,
Lay it out
so
for us.
I'm sorry, I did a little cheat sheet on that because our program is very open to like encouraging each person that's involved to be creative about how they find ways to do their therapy and embody in an embodied fashion, an embodied way. But I'll describe it per what. So responsive body, it's an embodied way to experience the body's natural capacity as a response system for transformation and healing. As a practitioner, we place attention to body sensations, perception, and movement as a means and mode for learning about ourselves and the world around us. And trying to meet the client's needs somatically, so physically, socially, nutritionally, and physiologically. And aiming to get them to get a deeper mind-body connection. Because, we can learn things here. We can go, okay, I have an issue. I get mad at this. It's because I'm sad. Okay. I know I should behave better. I should pay attention to that. We can understand it like cognitively that this is happening. But when I work with folks, it's like, well, where is that really coming from? Where do you feel that in your body? And different ways to go about helping find those new passageways and deeper connection to self and paying attention to those sensations when you're triggered by something, perhaps, right? And why that's happening and how you can manage that and deal with that.
So you've really got the psychology piece that we call that the top-down piece, right? Where it's cognitive, brain down.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've really brought in this responsive body practitioner piece, which is clearly body up, really getting to that somatic piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about how those two things need to meet right at the heart.
Yes. And we talk about love and the heart space all the time in responsive body, and that our intention is to be with with true love.
That's all it's about. It's all about the love. That sounds great. I am wondering if when you're working with people in that way, so you've got this, so do you work with people in the psychological capacity and then the body capacity at the same time?
It depends on the person, depends on how they appear available. And I ask because I have met a lot of folks with different, diagnoses or situations or challenges that, I want to be sure that they feel comfortable to get maybe into their physicality, there's a little psycho education that goes into that because, you don't always, in talk therapy when go, so what's going on with your nervous system? I mean, maybe some of us do, which is great, but like, I think, with a somatic approach, you are going to pay a lot of attention to that. And giving them a little information about how, perhaps at a time when they, didn't have maybe their developmental years and didn't have that proper attachment. There's also that attachment figure, perhaps, right, that wasn't solid in there, and that they learned how to survive, in the whole fight, flight, freeze situation, right? And what might be caught up in their system because it was never really dealt with, and that they have learned to cope in different ways. So we do have coping mechanisms, right? But that can sort of mask not finding the root of it.
Sure, we numb, we escape.
Yep. I mean, in my studies that like the freeze can even get stuck underneath the fight flight.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we like free that? It's not easy. It takes a lot of time and a lot of attention, and you need that time and attention.
Do you find that when you call attention to where they have tension in the body and, encourage them to be aware of it or to even consciously try to release it, that helps them move through whatever is kind of stored there?
I mean, sometimes it's, I have like experiences with certain folks that like, that's a whole new language for them, and it's a scary place to go. And I only, where I work, I only have a limited amount of time with folks, and I don't mean the weekly, like, there's that, but that they're in the program for a certain amount of time. And I know we haven't touched that, but like, so my clientele right now is very, inconsistent even. And this kind of thing does take time, but I do see the impact even when you start to psychoeducate and draw attention to body and to show as an active listener, like model for them to even listen to themselves and what's happening with their sensations. And, that there at least a little spark there to start something to shift. Mm-hmm. When I'm with my other responsive body practitioner folks, we actually have this.
It sounds a little cult-like, just so you know.
It's not a cult. Folks. It's not a cult. Well, it is a group of a lot of dancers actually, or dance background, or folks that are very involved with dance, whether they teach or they're performing and choreographing, like those kind of folks that feel a little more open to like moving with each other. And the facilitator leads us through like these body maps where it's sort of like improv dance or, but it's led with like sensation. And then she'll, give us cues as to like, let's move through this shape or, go into a position that feels right for you right now. Or like maybe we lead with this part of our body, or like we check out, she utilizes dance concepts and elements about, like levels and speed and, tempo, rhythm, and all those things that really have an impact on how we feel, right? And how we can explore those feelings. And so as culty as that might sound, it's actually really amazing. And you get like, you could be in a room with, folks that you just sort of met, or like, they have that common interest and that, common experience of being a mover and a dancer and a performer and a choreographer. And there's a freedom about that. And even though you don't know each other, you feel that body to body energy, support, and love.
Yeah. When people are new to somatics, I usually explain to them, and maybe this is good for our listeners and our audience members, is I explain to them that, have you ever been stuck on a problem, maybe at work, you have a problem, and you decide to go for a walk. And then while you're walking, while you're moving, there's this light bulb that goes on and you've come up with a solution to the problem. What Deb is talking about is that times 1,000, because when you move your body in a supportive way with people who understand somatics and how moving the body in a really different way than just that sagittal walking movement form can really release some things that have been keeping you stuck, not just at work, but in every aspect of your life, whether it's the way you deal with money or in relationships or in career or in parenting, whatever it is, there are these stuck patterns. And a lot of times, if you can get to a place of doing the types of somatic exercises that Deb was just describing, you can work through those a lot faster than just talking about it.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it kind of helps people to understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I actually do suggest things like that to my folks who I work with that find that don't really have that mind-body connection, like taking a walk, like getting outside even, and some of my work looks like actually, having the Pilates experience and being a person who loves yoga and, a dancer, depending on what is needed. Like sometimes I get the mat out, I put them on the mat. I might do a little body scan meditation with them to get them like focused in with their breath. Breath is key, right? How deep is your breath? What's the rhythm of your breath? Do you feel your breath? Like we're automatically doing that, right? We forget about what's automatically happening in our body all the time, keeping us alive. And, let's feel that aliveness though, right? How can we really feel that aliveness?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. You had mentioned earlier that you have a specific clientele and that they are, the way in which you're working with them can be sort of sporadic, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your clientele?
Well, right now I happen to be working at a program that helps parolees transition back into society. And I initially started working there to complete my AMFT hours. And I have completed those, so that's a plus. I happen to like the clientele. I really have found that I have a knack for, building rapport and inspiring, them to feel motivated to get stuff done. I mean, there's those who have diagnoses, which that's a little more challenging. But yeah, I mean, we balance out doing casework too, because they just got out of prison. So there's do you have your social security card? Do you have your Medi-Cal? Do you have your ID? So like all those kinds of things play into balancing out, working with them therapeutically. And so it's really challenging actually to really get to the nitty gritty of mental health. And I am assigned the folks who have the heavy mental health stuff. So there's also the challenge of that. And one of our goals is to, since the program is limited time, one of our goals is to connect them with Department of Mental Health to be sure that they, continue getting the support they need after they finish our program. And so again, the time they have with me is like this, because I'm juggling, and sometimes things happen where they get discharged early. Their schedule sometimes changes because of hopefully getting a job, because we're hoping they do those kinds of things too, right? And yeah, I mean, I have gotten to the nitty gritty with a few folks, which has been really awesome. That I was like, oh, yay, success, that kind of thing. But of course, yay for them.
And I'm sure that population, there's a lot of dissociation that has to happen. If I was in prison, I would completely not want to be in my body.
Some of these folks, exactly. They are so, so, so guarded. It's unbelievable. But I am sort of known as the little hippy dippy, like,
You're known
body worker girl there. So there's that. And, they find so like, oh, I want to do yoga or something. I'm like, it's really not what we're doing, but, but when I'm taking someone through some movements, I emphasize about how they feel when they're in the movement. Like I actually might put someone in a, say, plank position if I feel like, hey, let's see how that feels. How does that feel in your core? How does that feel in your center? Do you feel the strength you have there? Mm-hmm. The resistance against the ground? The resistance that, that you can feel like that you have the power of that, And so I talk about it in those terms. In a stretch, it's like, sure, okay, we're physically stretching this muscle. Okay. And what do you feel there? Okay. Can you maybe see how you can be more flexible in your life and different paths that can be created by this flexibility you feel in your body, and hopefully you can take this with you to your day-to-day activities. So that's how I, the verbiage I try to incorporate when working with them.
Beautiful. It's very empowering. And they probably haven't, conceived of their body in that way, and then connecting it to their strength or their flexibility or their resilience. So I think that has to be very impactful. And whether or not you're called the hippy dippy doesn't really matter, it's because I'm sure they enjoy it.
I don't mind the nickname.
Well, we are going to be taking a quick break. We will be coming back very shortly for the second half of this thought-provoking and insightful interview with our responsive body practitioner and AMFT, Deborah Rosen. So be sure to tune in next week for the second half of this interview, and we will see you soon. Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Body Insight Podcast. Please remember, the content shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Body Insight Podcast tab. Follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.